What's up everyone, it's John here from CONTRABIM with another Archicad tutorial. Today is going to be a part one of two parts on using point clouds, laser scans within Archicad, and today we are going to do a bit of an overview on the subject for those who may be new to laser scanning and producing point clouds, and then next week we'll come back with a part two where we'll actually walk through the steps of importing point cloud files into Archicad and then setting up different views and sections and really diving into the process of being able to model over those point clouds. So today's really an introduction, and next week we'll come back with a bit more of a modeling type exercise. I wanted to give a quick shout out to Will over at Lodon Sustainability, who I've been working with for several years now. His company does some amazing work at these large scale facilities, helping owners and operators analyze their power and water use and helping them lower their operating costs as well as their greenhouse gas emissions through a variety of different on-site projects and utility-based programs. So I'll have to bring Will on the YouTube channel and we can go into depth on some of those projects, which are super fascinating. But we've been leveraging Archicad for several years now and utilizing point clouds more and more, which can be super useful on a project just like this one, so we can go in and as-built the conditions and prepare for the upcoming projects. So let's take a look at this project from kind of like an overall view here. Not sure what I just did, but I hit everything. I'm going to bring back everything and I'm going to do a Control' to see my entire project. This is a very large project. It is over 100,000 square feet, and often on a facility this size, it's going to be a challenge to manage the size of your files as well as kind of the performance of your files. So there's always going to be a balance between resolution of points and performance of your machine. So I'm just going to point out real quick here. Let's take a look at my task manager. This computer definitely has a bit more power than most. But one of the big things when working with point clouds is memory. So I'm actually using 40% of my memory. I have 64 gigs in this machine. So if you have a 16 gigabyte machine and you try working with a file this size, you might have some issues. So so one of the ways to handle that obviously is to not export your entire project all at once. Now you can see here as I kind of hover over it, did it there for a second. Let's see if I can get that back. I want to hover over there. You can see my engine room. So it kind of goes blue there. You can see that one particular point cloud. Down here we have offices. There's some roof areas over here, and underneath there's production spaces. So I believe in this particular file we have 9 different point clouds that we've brought in, and generally for a rule of thumb for the point cloud file type, well, certainly I'd prefer working with E57. You can bring in a XYZ file type as well, but the E57 is a little bit more streamlined. If I'm going to be bringing in multiple points for a project this size, then I do like creating a folder to just locate all the LCF files within, and so that way I can just refresh from one source if I do end up having to change anything, and it just kind of cleans up the library manager here a little bit. You can see the size on this. This is 4.4 gigabytes worth of points that are loaded in, and I find that it's good to try to keep each of the exported E57s, which in this case get converted obviously to an LCF that contains a GSM file. I try to keep that exported E57 to usually between 300 to 400 megabytes. If it gets much larger than that, then I'll usually split up those points into 2 smaller sections. So for me, that's kind of my frame of reference for how many points to export to try to get to that 300 to 400. I think it's somewhere in the range of around 25 million points, if I'm not mistaken. I could be way off on that, but I think it's in that range of 25. Okay, so you can see here we have several of these loaded. I'm going to, what do we want to do next? Let's actually we'll jump out of Archicad here for a second. I want to just talk a little bit about some of the best practices from the other side of this equation, which is the registration and production side of laser scanning. So just want to touch on a few items here, and then we'll jump back into Archicad and kind of go through some of the views and talk about best practices of how to set those up so you can work efficiently within Archicad. Okay, so big picture here. Now this is actually, you can start to see here the entire facility and the corresponding site work around it. This is actually only about half the points of the project itself, and of that full resolution of points, we're limiting things down already pretty dramatically to sampled type points here. But even still, we currently are displaying 821 million points here, so almost 1 billion points just from the few sections of this project that we have turned on. Now, part of those are the roof section here, but the rest of them are really only the street side, offices, and then within the engine room over here, which is one of the main points of interest that we wanted to try to capture. I'm trying to zoom in to get in to show you that engine room is pretty cool. Okay. Oh, I keep zooming in and out a little bit too far, and it's screwing me up. So I want to, sorry, let's just stop with the scrolling right there. Okay, so this is actually an intensity-based rendering. We can turn on just the true color. There's a little bit of color here. It doesn't look like much. Actually, it might actually not be shown in this particular view, but there was some color that we took. Most of these scans we did in black and white just for the sake of time, and because a lot of these spaces are dark anyway, so capturing dark colors is not always that worthwhile, even though you can kind of do this blended mode rendering so that you can see dark spaces a little bit lighter. So there's some other views here, like a color-coded elevation, which can be useful for just setting an increment and being able to see the elevations of the project. So let's take a look at like the roof there, and you can really kind of start to see the different parts and pieces of the roof. But yeah, I don't want to go too deep into RealWorks here, but one of the main things for setting up your RealWorks or any registration software that you want to work with is just the ability to go through and start sampling and turning on parts and pieces of the project so that it's much easier to work with. So in this case, we're jumping into one location. This is just the engine room, which includes the interior, the roofs, the roof points that were actually captured from a different scan group, and it contains some outdoor spaces right around this room here. So this is kind of the style of point cloud that I like to work with, so that we pick up the inside, the outside, the roof, and kind of all around it, all in one point cloud. So this is like the preferred type of point cloud to export as a single file into Archicad. Now, if you have other consultants, and if those consultants are working with Autodesk-based software, then you can actually go one step further if you really want to be nice to them and give them individual breakdowns of rooms. One of the benefits of using a recap export out of RealWorks here is that you can actually kind of segment these so that you have different areas of the model, and so you can see as I'm turning these on here, when we export an RCP file, it will actually kind of create the individual RCS areas here that I'm turning on individually, and you can turn those on and off within either AutoCAD or Revit individually, but still bring in the overall scan file that you know, essentially we are building up piece by piece here, that would equal kind of that first chunk of points that we first showed there. So this would be kind of the segmented version of this first one that I turned on, but with all the different pieces. And so if you grab all of these and export those to an RCP file, which is a recap project file, it will create RCS of these, which is recap scan files for those individual areas, which can be nice for your consultants. So, okay, I want to probably wrap up this thought here on the Trimble RealWorks side. And we're going to jump back over to Archicad. Oh, there's actually one other thing that I want to point out here. We're going to just hide all of these points real quick. So hide cloud. And I do want to just show you that one of the cool things that you can do with RealWorks here is you can actually do some automated routing of MEP systems where it actually just goes through and tries to create cylinders. You can see all these cylinder objects that it created, and that is one way of kind of getting close to a very, very rough as-built MEP model, but these are just really kind of dumb objects. It's not going to identify any of these systems for what they are. You could go through and just rename them and group them, export them to a DWG file and bring those in. Yeah, I just want to point that out. You can see as we turn on here, let's just turn on our point cloud, that all those are nice and overlaid with the points themselves. So that's one cool thing that we can do here. Okay, enough of RealWorks. I'm going to close this down to try to save on my memory a little bit, and let's actually jump over to, I have several different views set up within here. Usually within the project I like having one folder that's kind of set up for as-built modeling, where we can take a look at, you know, just the point clouds. So here we're going to click through a few different views. So this is just point clouds, and there's some sections and grid lines turned on. So let's just grab this one as like a starting point. We'll jump over to open with current view settings, and let's see. Okay, so there we go. So this is just the point cloud, and you can see that cut there through that engine room, which is pretty nice. I mean, this is how you start modeling these complicated overhead systems, is do a survey, and then it makes it really easy to locate those in elevation there. You can see here that we're cutting over, and our office space there is a little bit lower, a few feet lower actually. So that would be a section here. Let's jump back to this floor plan view. Now currently, one of the big things that I want to talk about here when working with point clouds is really defining your floor plan cut plane settings. So right now, from this current view, this is like the default view, or actually it's slightly modified because I actually have this clip where we're going down to our current story but offsetting it by 1 foot. So we're actually only looking at points between 1 foot and 4 feet in height right now. So if we actually zero this out, I'm going to drag this off to the side just so you can see how this looks right now before we zero this out. And so this actually is just cutting down to 0 now. You'll see that we're going to start bringing in a lot more of that floor surface here, which really doesn't do us a whole lot of good. Yeah, maybe it's kind of nice to be able to see where some of those painted traffic lines are, but that doesn't really help us out that much. We can click on this again and kind of default that back to it because we changed it in our kind of temporary settings here versus going into our view settings and updating our floor plan cut plane from this location. So that's a pretty nice cut right there from 4 to 1. It gives us a nice layout on kind of the facility operations with different conveyors. It locates the primary pieces of equipment, and all while cutting out all the extra points, the, you know, probably hundreds of millions of points that get associated to the floor elements themselves. So so that's a nice way of kind of setting these views up. Let's click over here on the next one. So this is actually just a facility model. So this is kind of like the end result of what we did for this kind of first modeling effort, was to capture walls as well as the major pieces of equipment, and the conveyors were high priority, but also, you know, some electrical equipment was a priority. So yeah, this is kind of the end result of the point cloud. Now, of course, we can turn on kind of a hybrid mode, which is our point cloud plus our 3D here. So again, this is going to kind of generate and you can see that things are definitely a little slow to load there. This particular view, once again, we're picking up a lot of that floor, so this would probably be better off going into those view settings, updating this once again so that we are cutting, actually we're cutting from 8 feet on this one. Let's go down just to 1 foot above our current story. That way, at least we're cutting out a lot of those points from the floor that don't really give us that much information. So this will lighten up our view quite a bit and make it much easier to work with. So yeah, there I can tell that already that it's a lot lighter, and the kind of all the features of interest are really starting to jump forward. Now I can see certainly there's a lot of content in this facility that, you know, are like storage carts, operational type carts. So you need to know how to, well, you need to know the facility or whatever you're scanning first, you know, obviously, to kind of be able to quickly differentiate between what's a temporary thing and what's a permanent thing. But going out there and performing the scans is one way of seeing everything as you do it. So, okay, so those are kind of some different views. Now, I always like setting up a few extra views here, some different survey cuts. So this is, again, this is going to be like our facility plus our point cloud. So it's kind of a hybrid view here. From 2 feet to 7 feet. So again, that's kind of similar to some of the other views that we've been working with. Over in this space though, there's a lot of stuff going on up above. So sometimes we'll want to actually go through and make a cut from, say, like 0 to 15. So by changing our floor plan cut settings, we can start picking up a lot more of what's going on overhead. So here we can actually see we have a catwalk up here. If we go up a little bit further, in this case, like to 20 feet, then you can actually see that we're picking up more of those conveyors up there, both model and point cloud in this case. So yeah, a little slow to load there, but yeah, it's still, yeah, it's, that roof down there is what kind of killed us on the points. You can see how solid that is, and just lots of points there that we don't need to see. But you will notice as you're zooming in here, like my responsiveness is much faster right now. So as long as you stay zoomed into the areas that you want to be working with, generally speaking, things will stay pretty responsive, and certainly if you don't have solid areas like that, like we're picking up the ceiling here, I believe, probably as well as maybe the floor or parts of the floor, but yeah. So one of the things that I really like having set up when going through and trying to model a facility like this is having some temporary sections that you can take and pull around. Certainly it's nice to have a few sections of the project itself that will be able to cut all the way through. Let's shoot, I'm kind of getting stuck here as it's trying to load these other points. You can see that it's just, we're spinning right now. So it's something to always be aware of, just how many points that you are loading. If I wanted to do a quick load on kind of the larger view of the project, I would have switched to this first, and then it would have made it a lot faster for me to, you know, jump to the view where I wanted to get to. But yeah, from a view like this, obviously you can have sections that cut all the way through, model and laser scan, obviously. But I find when actually going through and building a model, having some sections that you can take and drag around the facility as you're trying to figure out different locations of it can be really, really useful. So like for this one here, I have this set up as just like a conveyor section. This is a section that I moved all throughout the project, really as I was trying to decipher what was going on there, because it can be a lot to really decipher elevations and pass on the model when you're looking at it, you know, just in a floor plan view. Like, again, I'm going to switch back over to this one quickly. That shows us a lot in terms of elevation, and it just, you know, it's can't really tell where things are at in elevation when you just hover over things here. So let's actually take a look at this. This is an interesting area. So another technique for working with point clouds is to use the Marquee Tool a lot. That's one way that you can really section down the number of points that are visible within your current view. So this is one way that you can really navigate and model and work much more efficiently while still displaying points, but going through and being able to, you know, still spin your screen around. So if I tried to do this and look at these particular areas with the rest of the points loaded, there's no way we wouldn't be moving this smoothly, and it would be much more of a challenge to kind of navigate, and especially to take objects, grab them and make manipulations on them here. So another technique I can see that I want to just point out here is when doing some of these surveys, it can help a lot to actually take coordinate points and take those and copy them around. Certainly when you have a lot of sloping on things, just by taking coordinate points and dropping them at different locations, like in this case, this is the bottom of the catwalk slope up to like the top of the catwalk. That's a nice way of just picking up the elevations so that you have something to kind of snap to when you say, you know, if I drew in a roof here and sloped it up, then I could take that and match it to my survey point here. Now you got to be careful that obviously you're on a point where you want to be. Having a 3D mouse to get to these types of views can be useful. But sometimes you need to zoom out a little bit to get enough density on those points to be able to double check to know exactly where you're at. So yeah, you can see that it's kind of like a bunch of spaghetti up here going up and down without using that coordinate point. That's really kind of like a survey point here. You can see I used it a lot of the points where we were stepping up and down and we had different transitions. That just made it a lot easier to go from a view like this to one that actually displays all those coordinates and makes it much easier to draw in this case, beams in the right locations. So, okay, well, I could talk about this pretty much all day. So we're going to wrap this one up here. I think that's pretty much the majority of what I wanted to cover, obviously, in this first section. In next week's video, we're going to take a closer look here at the engine room, which is a pretty interesting area, and we'll actually start getting into, we'll start by going through the steps of importing a point cloud for the first time, and then we'll start going through setting up some different sections and views and interior elevations, which can be you know, super powerful and useful for let's see, for just seeing what's going on within those rooms. So interiors with point clouds are a great way of kind of clipping things and being able to work with several different views of the project or of the point cloud very quickly. So, all right, yeah, next week we'll be back with more step-by-step and best practices for importing and setting up those views. Hope you enjoyed this video. There's a lot more that we can talk about with laser scans, just specifically when we start talking about like modeling techniques over the top of lasers. But for now, we're going to wrap this one up here, and I'll look forward to next week's video where we'll dive a little bit deeper into the workflow. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you have not already joined our channel. And yeah, I'll look forward to catching you on the next video. Again, thanks for watching.